So it's really great to be here. First, I just need to say I'm excited mostly because when I talk about the stuff that I'm about to talk about today, which is how we get more inference done locally, a lot of you are going to understand and hopefully be excited because right now, really the only person I can talk to is my wife, and she just says, "Oh, that's nice." So hopefully we can get a little bit more of a reaction out of the crowd here. So with AnythingLLM, what we want to do is bring more of their daily inference onto your device. And this is really a kind of underserved opportunity here because people honestly dismiss local. So I was going to talk today about high-level practices because a lot of people here want to build applications because that's the thing that actually helps AI adoption. So I was hoping to talk about some tips and tricks because local models have their rough edges. But with AnythingLLM, With AnythingLLM, we have basically 3 tenets for how we go about building a consumer application that is genuinely useful for people. But the first and most important, and the one that I'm obsessed with, is it's local. Everything has to be local first. I think the future of AI is frankly hybrid, right? Clouds have their strengths, but also have their costs. And local have their rough edges, but they are genuinely useful. And as hardware gets better, and models are getting smaller or the intelligence density is increasing, we can just do more locally. But about that is that we have to be optimized. And I mean this at the hardware level. So running the right engine, using the right inference provider, and using the right model depending on the use case for the user, but also what they have, right? So people shouldn't have to go out and buy a whole server rack just to summarize an email. And then lastly, it needs to be useful right out of the box for the everyday person. Now, that's kind of a weird talking point in SF when everyone is usually pretty technical and also knows what an API key is. But the vast majority of the world doesn't live in San Francisco, and a lot of these people, frankly, get confused by these things. So it just needs to just work. So AnythingLLM, you can download it. It's a free app. We have an open source project as well. I think we do pretty well. People really do love us. And honestly, it's just fun. Like, I just really enjoy this problem. So this is where we get to, I guess you would say, the meat of the entire problem when it comes to building a product. So the future is hybrid, but the magic is local. And this is genuinely what people think their problems are like. But the reality is it's really kind of like this. And that's not to say that their use cases are dumb. They're not dumb. In fact, they're simple. But simple doesn't mean easy. And so what we want to do is have most people's easy inference done on device and then use the cloud when they get to these complex workflows. Naturally, a lot of people like to start small, just sending a chat, maybe summarizing a document, and then we go up from there until eventually you're doing automations. But going from 0 to fully automated is, frankly, that's a daunting task for everyday people. And also keep in mind that AI adoption, while very well is going at a very good clip, it is not ubiquitous. The average person doesn't really understand the mechanics of how models in general work. As far as they're concerned, it's a magician on the other end of the machine typing out their response. And that is something that, honestly, users equally, when you're using local models, shouldn't be concerned with. And that's why I think the problem is actually so interesting. So the reality of workloads for the everyday person, and let's just think of just general productivity. Let's keep the scope focused. So usually it's help me draft an email. Now, this is a very basic use case, right? There's really no reason you should be sending every email in your inbox to the cloud, candidly. I think actually I have like a 40-something message long thread about this event with AMD, and that's only 2,000 tokens. And you can easily run 1632K on a lot of devices. And then you also have summarize this meeting. Everybody has meetings. You can also do these locally. An example of this is I actually tried to figure out what's a good example of a long-form audio where someone just talks constantly, even if it's about nothing. And so I went and found like a Lex Friedman podcast, and that's about 32,000 tokens. And so your 1-hour engineering call, your 30-minute stand-up, easily fits in a context window that you can run on device. And then you have research about that, right? These proactive AI assistants. Now, deep research is where things can get a little hairy because it depends on the problem. But with smart engineering, using local models, even if you had 16,000 tokens, that's plenty to keep the answer smart. And so what we're thinking is that basically around 70%, this is what most people are doing every day for productivity workers. Not maybe necessarily for you if you're a programmer, but we start somewhere that is, I guess, an easier engineering problem to solve. And so this is maybe a controversial take. I honestly think that local AI engineering is actually a harder problem because this is kind of what you're working with. You have a U-Haul. The person has to put stuff in the U-Haul, they use it, they are driving across the country, doing stuff. You have limited space. You cannot just throw money at this problem and expect a bigger truck. The truck is the truck, and you have to use the space wisely. Whereas if you're just if you could just throw money at the problem, more GPUs, more server farms, more this, more that, you basically don't have to actually really engineer a lot. You basically pay to play. And so you can just throw all the context that you have with basically no regard into this kind of endless warehouse of compute. And while it will work, it's not optimized. And as an engineer or as anyone in here likes to do, you want to optimize your solutions once you get started. And so I actually think that the tooling gap is actually just code. I don't actually think it needs to be a better model, although better models absolutely help. If no local models dropped starting today, like no more, we're not going to get any new ones, I still think that we can genuinely solve this local inference problem. I think it's a tooling problem, and as hardware also becomes really great and commoditized across devices, you just unlock better experiences. And so users, they have more of an experiential impression of AI. So they want to say, wow, that was quick, or that happened for free, or oh, I just clicked some buttons, or then they get excited about, okay, well, like, what's the next thing I can do? You will never, ever find a consumer user saying it ran on a specific piece of hardware, or that they used the latest model at this quantization using this method, or they used this kind of pipeline. But these are things developers like to talk about, but these are things consumers like to say. And so the job is really to get them to say this without ever acknowledging that. And that is potentially a very hard problem, because users genuinely don't know or care what's in their computer. It's just a thing that's supposed to do work for them. And when you build apps, that is what you're doing. So what are some tips to do this? Because local models do have rough edges, just like how, well, I guess the cloud model rough edge is really just cost. So let's just say, I'm literally just making up a term here. I just called it molecular systems. But basically, it's just something that is like, it should operate by itself in isolation that also is easily extensible. This is just basic system design. So let's say with the example that you want to do a meeting note taker. This is a pretty, I'd say, bog standard use case for local models. So the first thing you have to do is you have to come up with, I guess, a pipeline. So you need a way to, let's just say, transcribe the meeting. You probably want a summary model, so you need a way to run models. And then you probably are going to want a way to chat with that transcript, because naturally that's what you want to do. Okay, well, it actually turns out that maybe now with the summary model, it might make sense to have document awareness so you can look across their computer. But sometimes files get complicated. Maybe they're all images. Maybe it's just a bunch of scanned receipts. But you also want to be efficient with this. So now you need a built-in vector database and embedding pipeline. Okay, well, these two things can operate independently, but they plug into each other. And then it's like, well, wait. Should I be indexing all of the notes that I just made as well? And then it's like, oh, wait, hold on. The user actually now wants emails to also have all of this work together. So now you're building a plugin system. Does that have OAuth? I don't know. It's up to you. But you can see how these problems compound very quickly. And then all the while, you forgot to actually manage the user system memory, because keep in mind, you're doing this on a computer that they also have to use. So you're also competing at the same time. This is where these problems become a unique engineering problem, I guess. That's the easiest way to say it. And so another tip is differentiating signal from noise. I remember during the height of like the whole vector database thing that was sometime, I think, last year or something like that. Time flies. It was like every 3 days, there was a new vector database, and every 3 seconds, a new RAG technique dropped. And now it's all memory. And there's so much to do. And I'm not saying those solutions aren't worth it or they weren't good. But what I'm saying is that these concepts, you should really be focused on solving your problem and not hype jumping to the shiny object that everyone keeps talking about. Solve your problem the way you want to solve it, then look at improving. And so I should have clicked these earlier, but you can see that this was just some of the stuff that I remember. And then with memory, we have a whole bunch of other things, and a new one probably just came out when I clicked this slide. I mean, it's a little ridiculous, honestly, and you should really just focus on solving your problem. And now also, okay, we gotta relax with tool calling, okay? Just these 3 MCPs, which I know might be cherry picking because they're probably the worst offender of doing this, but just these 3 are 163 tools and more than 64,000 tokens, just in tool calling. I'm not including a system prompt, I'm not including the conversation history, I'm not including anything else. So one tip that we found at AnythingLLM that works really well, surprisingly, is just re-rank. It's actually really easy to just take a little bit of the conversation history plus your tools, and sure, maybe it's a half a second overhead, but it's worth it because sending 64,000 tools or tokens worth of tools straight to your model just basically blows up the entire system. This is honestly just a really useful method, and there's other ways of doing this. You can re-rank other items that in your pipeline as well, but just this is a simple thing. Tools are the things that make agents. They are the things that make models useful. So you should also be careful when using local models because you give them too many tokens, it takes forever to get a response back. So for example, let's just say you were just vibe coding, right? And you designed a system that was bad but used a cloud provider. Well, you're going to get a crazy bill, and they're just going to wait a little longer. And maybe that's something that you can stomach for a little bit. Whereas if you design a bad system on local, you turn their computer into a space heater and potentially brick it. And this is where you need to be careful, and these kind of tips, which this was a non-exhaustive list I didn't want to go over. So there's, I think, a meet the speaker thing after this. If you want more concrete tips about your specific use case, I might have some ideas. But in general, always keep this in mind. Users hate waiting, but they really hate their computer catching on fire. So definitely keep that in mind. And so now, I believe it has never been a better time to innovate. And honestly, people are still sleeping on local, but we're coming out with hardware that genuinely allows us to run these powerful, small models in a very smart way that is also economically viable. You really can't beat a free token. So AI is already useful. I don't think we're going to drop this whole idea of AI tooling. This isn't blockchain. And we're also so accustomed to AI tools just being there for us now. With local, we can have our cake and eat it too, because it doesn't cost us anything. And I know I've been talking about local. It maybe sounds like I'm a local maximalist. I don't think that local replaces cloud. I think local augments cloud. It makes that computer that you bought just a little bit more valuable, because now you're getting tokens for free on it. And when you have those complicated workflows that are truly requiring 1 million context tokens, you can delegate that to a cloud inference. And that's something that we do at AnythingLLM. And so I hope that all of us that are all building applications, we can just bring more tasks to on-device where they belong to just solve the easy problems first. And that's it. Thank you.